welcome back to episode 40 of UnHammered with your host, Brantt Myhres, and 40 weeks, deadly. Hope you beautiful humans have had a great week. I've had a fucking terrible week. I'm still alive, but just it's we'll talk about it, but it's just one of those weeks where you're sick and you're not feeling good and anxiety takes over and fear of the unknown, fear of losing control of situations, etc., which we'll get into. And that's just part of the journey, man. And part of the journey in recovery and sobriety, if you're on it, God bless you. But it's getting through those moments without calling the dealer or heading to the liquor store. It's pretty plain and simple. You live life on life terms. And that's what I've been doing, man. Fucking in grind mode here. I'm on antibiotics and my fucking tooth. Got another one, boys and girls. Had a cavity fixed a few days ago. And, it's just like the other one. I thought when I left it was going to be good, right? And she's sensitive. So I don't know how the old coffee's going to taste this morning when we do the cheers coming up, but we're going to do it anyways. I don't give a fuck. All right. You guys ready to rock? Cheers to the miracle. If you've been able to withstand taking drugs or alcohol for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, multiple years, cheers to you and me and everybody else. Running, skipping, jumping, hiking, Diet Coke, root beer, coffee, tea, I don't give a shit. Bang, let's go. Yeah, man, it's that's sensitive. It hurts. It actually hurts. Can you believe it? I don't know. I think I might just go in there and just say, hey guys, upper lower dentures, let's rock. Rip every fucking tooth out, man. Let's get the dentures rocking here. I don't know. And then the next day it could be something else that pops up, right? I don't know. Life is weird. You have moments of clarity and feeling good, and now I've had moments the last few days or last week like of pain and maybe a little bit of sorrow, and I guess that's part of the journey. But hey, why don't we read a little prayer for the day or meditation for the day as my mouth is throbbing. What do we got here, folks? All right. Why don't we do meditation? Thought for the day. Here we go. When I find myself thinking about taking a drink or a drug, I say to myself, don't reach out and take that problem back. You've given it to God and there's nothing you can do about it. So I forget about the drink and drug. One of the most important parts of the AA and NA program is to give our drink and drug problem to God honestly and fully and never reach out and take the problem back to ourselves. Okay? If we let God have it and keep it for good and then cooperate with him, we'll stay sober. Have I determined not to take the drink problem back to myself? ? Have you? I had to this morning. It wasn't that I felt like drinking, but or doing drugs, but I had to, get on my knees again and pray for man. Sometimes it's just strength and meditation. Constant effort is necessary. If I am to grow spiritually and develop a spiritual life, I must keep the spiritual rules persistently, lovingly, patiently, and hopefully. By keeping them, every mountain of difficulty shall be laid low. The rough places of poverty of spirit shall be made smooth. And all we know that God is Lord of my ways. To get close to the Spirit of God is to find life in the healing and strength. And our prayer for the day is the serenity one. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen to that. What do we got here? We got a couple notes, don't we, guys? As usual. This guy's name is Mitch P. Hey, Brantt, Mitch here, fellow Canadian. hockey guy. I just wanted to send a quick message to say thank you for telling your story in such an honest and open way. I just read Painkiller within 2 days, and I couldn't put it down. It was such an amazing story. I relate with a lot of the struggles you went through as a child growing up into my teens. That's probably the reason I connected so much with your story. Huge congrats. Anyways, just wanted to say thank you, man. Wishing you the best. Thanks, Mitch. Yeah, I bet you there's a lot of people out there that can relate with my childhood. I wasn't the only child. You know, there's millions of them around the world that's happened to. I wasn't special. But for whatever reason, there was that path. And, you know, you can get as spiritual as you want. Sometimes I've thought, and I've, you know, heard this from my sister, Cher. She read this book called Embraced by the Light, I believe. And it talks about before you come down to earth, you know, and that you chose this journey, this path. Before you even get here, you've chosen your parents, you've chosen the addiction, you've chosen the ups and downs and the girlfriends and the breakups and the money and the no money, and you've chosen it all. You've chosen it, and the harder your journey, it's you know, maybe there's a different level of consciousness or whatever it may be, or I wouldn't want to say a different level of heaven, because heaven is supposed to be beautiful for everybody. But I do think that through adversity, that's the only time in life that you're going to grow. You're not going to grow when things are good. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but I found personally, when adversity and I feel like my life is going to shit and why me, when I come out of it on the other side, it makes sense and I feel euphoric. When things are easy or sort of smoothly going along, I'm grateful and I'm appreciative. But, you know, hey, like I said, I've been struggling with fear and anxiety about my teeth or my tooth. And as I mentioned prior, you know, I passed out in the dentist chair when they ripped one out. And so it looks like I'm probably going to have to get sedated just so that I don't pass out again. I don't want to go through that, you know, and from what I understand, you don't really remember anything. If anybody's gone through it, let me know. But it's my back molar. And so my fear is that I'm not going to be in control when that needle goes in and they pump the juice in me. Because what they say, you don't remember nothing, but you're coherent. And I don't know what to think about that. You know, then there's the other side of me that's like, fuck it, Brantt, just go in there and get numbed up and let them rip it out, you know. I don't do well with not being in control. And I think as an addict and an alcoholic, people can relate to that. We try to control our environments to make it almost perfect. And then when it doesn't go to our liking, we can react in different ways. And sometimes they're not positive. They're just not. You know, and you can get into like a mental exhaustion of check mode, which means you're always checking to see if things are perfect. Right? You know, oh God, how am I feeling today? And I've dealt with like health issues with my head for a while, and that crippling anxiety or fear of just, I don't even know how to explain it sometimes. Sometimes you're sort of just taking it minute by minute. Have you guys ever experienced that? Where you're just scared for no reason, you know? And thank God that I'm sober. Like, Jesus Christ, I don't know how I would do this if I was getting loaded. Well, I probably know how I would do it, and it would probably end to the left of me in the garage with the fucking a hose coming through it. It'd be too unbearable. So sobriety's given me so many gifts like that, and even when you think you can't keep going on, you go on, you know, and the next day happens. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm in check mode, man. I'm checking shit out all the time. How's your head doing? How's it feeling? Feeling a bit heavy today, Brantt? Your head's feeling a little bit heavy today. And you okay? Like, I don't know. I'm gonna ask God on this one. I ain't beating the heart here. everybody, you know. I ain't in charge of that. When you get to be north of 50, I'll be 51 in 2 weeks. And I ain't young. And the reality is you hear so-and-so, they died. Oh, how old were they? Oh, they were 51. Lived a decent life, right? It's not like I'm fucking young. So I guess I got to start getting more grateful that, or stop expecting tomorrow to come. Stop expecting it. What else do we got? Sorry, I got sidetracked there. Here's a guy, Matthew P., who just keeps doing amazing. Excuse me. 90 days today, my man. Thank you for playing a part in my sobriety. Excuse me, especially the first week. Your pods really helped me get through some rough days. Much love. Wow, that was a really nice message for me to get. Thank you for that, buddy. And 90 days, amazing. And then we got Ryan Davis, who listens to the show all the time, buddy. And I just wanted to acknowledge you because you keep, every week you write in and checking in, and grateful to say that I stayed unhammered for another week. This past week, I was feeling down and really missing my daughters. Last time I saw them was in December. Thank you for sharing that list about faith. I needed to hear that. Yeah, Ryan, my son's been gone for 2 days with his grandparents and his mom. And I miss him tremendously after 48 hours. I can't even imagine, December. Yesterday, I booked a reservation and will be taking a trip to Minnesota. I'll be visiting my girls for a week. I'm excited to see them and grateful. I'll tell you what, they're excited to see you too, Ryan. And I'm sure that they're so proud of their dad for the journey that you've been on and being a rock for them, because that's really what it is being a rock for those children. And what else was I going to talk about? We've mentioned boundaries before, and it's funny, hey, isn't those boundaries that you consider sort of like a fine line? And, when do you sort of like erase a little bit of the boundary? And I found that personally, in some situations that have happened, whether it's business or personal, whatever it may be, I have to have certain standards for myself, and I have to be able to walk the walk, right? Like I can't talk to somebody about staying sober or fucking, I don't know, being a good parent or whatever it may be, even though I'm sure that, there's lots of stuff that I could do, but I really am trying to be a great father. My daughter, Chloe, she, she's at an age, or has been at an age for the last couple of years where it's been, I won't lie, man, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle. And I'm having a tough time with that one. And I pray for her health and her happiness. And I pray that, I don't know, one day that, things will actually start to maybe be a little bit brighter. But for now, all I can do is pray for Peanut. And hopefully she's doing great and she has a big smile on her face today and she's happy. But yeah, the boundary thing, it's interesting. Like when I do it, when I hold up the boundaries, I feel bad. I feel bad about it. I feel a little bit guilty, right? But I have to check my motives behind it. And when I check my motives and I check myself actually on why am I doing this, it checks out. It checks out, man. It just does. And what else do I want to chat about? Man, oh man, did I ever get a lot of rude, disgusting messages from people on the internet? Again, the keyboard warriors, those tough guys, tough girls, about Wayne Gretzky and what a traitor and a Nazi and all this stuff and hate. Like I said, it's a free society on what you can say, and Twitter's about that, and TikTok, and you can have your opinions, which I totally respect. I totally respect that. Doesn't mean I agree, but I respect that you have a voice for sure. But man, people can get really mean, hey, in this world, and just downright like I read that they're signing a petition in Edmonton, Alberta, to change the Wayne Gretzky Street that they named after Gretz back in, I don't know what year it was. But to me, that is I'm just sad to hear that. I think 11,000 people have already signed that. Again, I'm not going to get too much into Wayne Gretzky other than what he means to me and what the impact he's had on me. And I think millions and millions of Canadians and Americans too, like everybody has to remember every one of his children, I think he has 4 or 5 of them were born in the United States, right? That's been his permanent residence since 1988, so he has love for his country, and he has love for another country that he also resides in and his kids are born in. But the political game, man, people get gross, man. They're just with their words. It's wild. I couldn't even imagine being a politician. The abuse that you go through, oh my God. That would be next level shit, right? Who are you guys staying sober for today? And maybe you can write that down and you can let me know. There's obviously I have my 2 main reasons, which is Kane and Chloe, why I would stay sober today. And then the next one would be God. I feel God's given me a lot of like get out of prison cards, and with the suspensions and the overdoses and all that kind of stuff and rebuilding. And, people could call it lucky. I don't, one of my friends said that to me. He goes, "Oh, you just got horseshoes up your ass." I'm like, "Fuck you, horseshoes up my ass." That really bothered me. I'm like, "You think this is lucky, what I've done the last 17 years, dude? Really? Think it's about luck?" Like, sorry, pal, you're fucking out to lunch, dude. You weren't with me in that first year every day that I went to a fucking meeting at a church. Had goals and aspirations only from staying sober. You weren't with me on the flight to LA to get hired by the Kings. You weren't with me for 2 years when I wrote the book. So, dude, no, this isn't about luck. Now, what do they say when hard work meets preparation or something like that? Or the harder I worked, the luckier I became. I don't know if it's luck, man. I don't. I think it's faith. And you got to have it. You got to have it in this program. One question was, hey, Brantt, how long does it take to repair a relationship that you destroyed in your addiction? Well, that varies. There's different dates for those. Some are immediate and some haven't been repaired. And it's been 28 years. Pretty wild to think about it. I would have thought that they would have been sort of repaired, but they're not. So some of them were, instantly they're like, yeah, no, we forgive you, buddy, but like get some sobriety behind you and for once just show us that you're serious, and then some of them are like, you hurt me so bad that I don't ever want to fucking talk to you again. I'm like, okay, you got to take it. Hey guys, I might get into my audiobook voice right now because there's a story in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I read this, like I said, it's the first book that I've read ever in my life, like cover to cover, right? Back in 2008. And I read this story about a pilot and how he burnt everything to the ground and in his addiction, in his alcoholism. And I want to read it. And grab yourself a tea, or if you want to go in and warm up your coffee or whatever it may be. But I'm going to read a story, and it's called Grounded. Alcohol clipped this pilot's wings until sobriety and hard work brought him back to the sky. And the reason why I love this story, you guys, is because it really reminds me of my journey and what I had to go through. And I've got Indian in me as well. So here we go. I am an alcoholic. I am part Comanche Indian and grew up in poor but in a loving home until alcoholism took both of my parents. Then the divorces came, 3 for each parent. I learned the anger that is such a part of alcoholic family life. I vowed I would never become alcoholic. Active in my Indian community, I saw that what alcohol did there also, and I was repelled and disgusted by it. I graduated from high school at 17 and immediately left to join the Marine Corps. I found a home there, relishing the tough discipline, camaraderie, and together spirits. I excelled and was one of the 3 who were promoted upon graduation from boot camp. 4.5 years later, I was given an opportunity to go into flight training. Success at the end of the 18th month period would mean pilot wings as an officer's commission. Again, I excelled. Although most of my peers had college educations, college, there's my grade 9 popping up again. I didn't go to college. Let's read that again. Although most of my peers had college educations and fear of failure constantly plagued me, I graduated near the top of my class. All right, just want to make sure my voice recorder is still rocking. I excelled at something else too. Drinking was encouraged. The pilot persona was one of hard, gusty flying with equally hard drinking, and attendance at all happy hour was considered a duty. Okay. I did not need any encouragement and reveled in the squadron camaraderie, good-natured joking, and competition at these events. 1 year into my training, I reported for the final phase and met a young beauty. I was drunk the night I met her, and she would have nothing to do with me, but I could never have approached her without the false courage the alcohol gave me. The next day, I saw her again, this time sober, and we began to date. I graduated from flight training on her 20th birthday, and she pinned my gold wings and my second lieutenant bars on me. We were married 2 weeks later. Wow. We have just celebrated our 35th anniversary, and she is the most wonderful person I could have ever found. We immediately had 2 young sons, and I left to go to war in Vietnam. 13 months later, I returned. I spent 11 and a half years total time in the Marine Corps before deciding to get out because of the family separation my military career required. I had seen enough family chaos to know that I could never allow that to occur in my own family. So reluctantly, even painfully, I resigned my commission and joined a major airline. I had gained a reputation in the Marines I was proud of. I had many accomplishments to my credit, a good combat record with decorations and skill as a pilot. Okay. Slowly, I worked my way up the airline structure and finally became a captain after 20 years. It had been a strife-ridden company, and our family endured some tough times. During one of the lengthy labor strikes, we adopted a baby girl. She completed our family. Nearly half Chippewa Indian, she was a beautiful baby of 17 days when we took her home with us. Well, here we go. My drinking continued to escalate, but I did not believe I was any different from my drinking comrades. I was very wrong. I had 2 charges of driving under the influence years apart, which I had wrote off to bad luck. Didn't I just talk about luck? And I paid handsome legal fees to get the charges reduced. This was years before the Federal Aviation Administration began cross-checking driver's records against pilot licenses. One night after a hard afternoon and late evening of drinking, I and my 2 fellow crew members were arrested. Wow. We were charged with violation of a federal law that prohibits the operation of a common carrier while impaired. It had never been used against airline pilots before. I was devastated. Suddenly, I was thrust into an experience beyond my worst nightmare. I arrived home the next day, sick at heart and unable to look my wife in the face. Ashamed and destroyed, I saw 2 doctors that day and was diagnosed as an alcoholic. I was in treatment that night, going in with only the clothes on my back. The news media had picked up the story, and it was all over the world on all major television networks, and my shame and humiliation were beyond words. All the light in my life had gone out, and I entertained the idea of suicide. Yeah. I could not envision ever smiling again or having a day with a bright horizon. I was hurting more than ever than I knew a human could hurt, and I just wanted the pain to end. I became notorious in commercial aviation, and the media had had a field day with me. I lost my FAA medical certification because of my diagnosis of alcoholism, and the FAA issued an emergency revocation of all my licenses. I thought about my parents, now both dead, my Indian people, all of those I had previously considered alcoholics. And I knew I had become exactly what I vowed I would never become. Any of you guys vowed that? I did. I learned my career was over the 6 o'clock news one week after entering treatment. I refused to watch TV, but my fellow patients kept me informed. This reminds me of when I was in treatment and the San Jose Sharks were playing, and I was watching my team play in rehab, first and second treatment. I was the lead story on the news for weeks. I was joke fodder for the late night TV comics as they ridiculed me, my profession, and my airline. I also learned I was going to federal prison. Wow. The sentence was mandatory if convicted, and there was no doubt in my mind that I would be. With nothing left, I dedicated myself to learning about recovery. I believed that the key to my sobriety, and hence my survival, lay in the power of all I was being taught, and I spent no idle moments in treatment. I worked as hard as I worked to earn my wings, but this time my life was at stake. Yeah. I struggled to regain a spiritual connection as I underwent one legal crisis after another. I got out of treatment, determined to complete 90 AA meetings in 90 days, but was afraid my court date would interfere. So I completed my 90 meetings in 67 days. I went through an intense media-covered 3-week trial. On most evenings after the day in court, I sought refuge in AA meetings and renewed my strength for the coming day. Recovery and all I had learned allowed me to handle things much, much differently than my two co-defendants. Many speak of my serenity throughout this experience of horror, which surprised me. Inside, I did not feel what others seemed to see. I was found guilty and sentenced to 16 months in federal prison. My two co-defendants received 12-month sentences and chose to remain free pending appeals, while I chose to go into prison and get it over with. I had learned how to live life on life's terms and not my own. From somewhere back in my high school days, I remembered a poem that says something to the effect of, "Cowards die 1,000 deaths. A brave man only once." And I wanted to do what had to be done. Jesus, this is... Whew. Just need to take a sip of coffee here, please. All right. I was terrified of walking into prison, but told my children that I could not come back out that door until I walked through the front. I remembered that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the ability to continue in the face of it. On the day I entered prison, 9 of my fellow pilots began making our family's house payments, which they did for nearly 4 years. Wow, that reminds me of my San Jose Shark teammates giving me a check after I got suspended. Every one of them in my stall. After my release from prison, I made 4 attempts to get them to let us take over, and they refused each time. So many came to help us from places we could never have imagined. I served 424 days in the federal prison system. I started an AA meeting in prison, which was opposed by the prison administration, as they hassled us weekly as we came together to meet. The weekly meeting was a quiet oasis in the desert, a few moments of serenity in a prison full of bedlam. My prison term was followed by 3 years of probation, which restricted my travel and had 13 other conditions. Upon release from prison, no longer a pilot, I returned to the same treatment center where I had once been a patient and worked full-time with other alcoholics. Wow. Pay was minimal, but I found I was effective at reaching others. And I wanted desperately to pay back some of what, so many had given to me. I did that for 20 months. For a long time, I did not consider flying again, but I could not purge the dream of doing so from my heart. One of my meditation books had said, before any dream can come true, there must be first a dream. Yeah. I had been told that if I wanted to fly again, I would have to begin at the very bottom. With a private license, even though I had previously held the highest license the FAA awarded, the Air Transport Pilot License, I studied for and took all of the lengthy FAA written exams. I had to go back and relearn things I learned 30 years before and long since forgotten. I had unexpectedly been able to require my FAA medical certificate after proving the quality of my sobriety for more than 2 years. The trial judge had put sanctions on me that made it impossible for me to fly again because of my age. My lawyer had become my friend and worked for 3 years after my conviction without taking a cent from me. He was one more person who entered my life in a manner I could only describe as some kind of divine providence. He took a motion to the judge to lift the sanctions, and the tears came flooding down my cheeks when he called to let me know the judge had approved it. With the lifting of those sanctions, the impossible became slightly less impossible. An extraordinary amount of work was left to do, but at least an attempt could now be made. None of my friends thought it was possible to regain the license literally from the ground up. But I had learned how to do so many things one day at a time, one small step at a time. So I went after the licenses in exactly that manner. Had I chosen to view the whole panorama of licensing requirements, I would have quit. They were simply too overwhelming. But one day and one thing at a time, they were doable. So I did them. I knew no one would ever hire me to fly passengers. I was an ex-con, a convicted felon, a drunk. I had doubts as to whether anyone would ever allow me to fly cargo. It took several months for the FAA to process my licenses and mail them to me. On the exact day they arrived, another miracle occurred. I received a phone call from the head of the pilot union who informed me that the president of the airline had decided personally to reinstate me. Here we go. I had not pursued the legal grievances process I was entitled to because I knew my actions could never be defended or excused. I had steadfastly accepted responsibility in front of TV cameras and in front of the treatment center because my recovery demanded rigorous honesty. Wow. It was almost beyond my ability to believe that the president of the airline could ever consider having me work for them again. I marveled at the courage of such a man and such an airline. What if I had relapsed? ? What if I flew drunk again? ? The media would have a field day. For days afterwards, as I awoke each morning, my first thought was that it had only been a dream and that it could not be possibly occurring. Almost 4 years after my arrest and the explosive devastation of my life, I signed my back to work agreement. Wow. Restored to full seniority, giving the retirement I had lost. And once again, an airline pilot, ! A large crowd gathered to watch me sign the document. So much had happened in my life. I lost almost everything I had worked to acquire. My family had suffered public shame and humiliation. Yet much more also happened. Every loss had been replaced with rewards. Yeah. I had seen the promises of the big book come true in a magnitude I could never imagine. I had gotten sober. I had regained my family. And once we were again close and loving, I had learned how to use the 12 steps and to live the wonderful program that was founded so many years ago by two drunks. It took several years, but I learned to be grateful for my alcoholism and the program of recovery it forced me into. For all those things that had happened to me, and for me, for a life today that transcends and far exceeds anything that I had previously known. I could not have that today if I had not experienced all the yesterdays. My back-to-work agreement said I would retire as a co-pilot, but the miracles in this program have never ceased for me. And last year I was notified that the president of my airline had granted permission for me to once again be a captain. I retired at 60, and I checked out as a 747 captain, which means my final year at my airline concluded in the left seat. The circle, so sacred to my Indian people, will once again have been completed. I take little credit for all that has happened. I suited up and showed up. But the process of AA, the grace of a loving God, and the help of so many around me have been far more responsible for the events in my life. Today, one of my sons has more than 3.5 years of sobriety after nearly losing his life to alcohol and drugs. He is truly one more miracle in my life, which I'm grateful for. I have returned to my Indian people once again, and after a long, shameful absence, I am dancing again and returning to the old ways I left behind. I have spoken at 2 Native American AA conventions, something I never thought I'd see when I was a youngster growing up. Adversity truly introduces us to ourselves, as I mentioned. But we need never deal with our adversities alone, as long as we can find another alcoholic in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Wow. Yeah, man, I really relate to that story big time, big time. And again, I'm an emotional man, and when strings get touched with me, a chord like that, yeah, it's hard for me to hold back. But whatever. I hope you guys like that story. I've never read a full story on here, but I think that pilot one is my favorite one out of the big book. Hopefully you enjoyed it, everybody. Okay. Why don't we read a little thing about before you go to bed tonight out of the big book. And we'll end it with this. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? ? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once ? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? What could we have done for others and pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. I love all you guys. Thanks for tuning in. I haven't been feeling well, but that's okay. A little sick, you know. And then I read that story and I start tearing up. Yeah, it's all good. We're in week 40, everybody. There's people that have been sober for 40 weeks. And that's the miracle, isn't it? It's a miracle. And to those of you that aren't sober and you're maybe listening somewhere out in the world, keep the faith. Keep the faith. And we're here. We're here. info@unhammered.com, right in. And I love you all. And have a wonderful, wonderful week. Thanks.